These are the mowers that I've used at my house for the 10 years that I've been here. And I hate them. But I also really like them. The love-hate relationship with these, not just these two, with all Toro Recycler mowers. And like a lot of people say about European cars, when they work, they're great. But when they break, man, what a pain in the ass. This is the one that I use pretty much all the time. This is a Toro Super Recycler SR4. Guaranteed to suck. It's got a Briggs & Stratton motor of unknown horsepower. It's around the time when they stopped putting horsepower ratings on small or outdoor power equipment. This one is nice. It's got an aluminum body, and it has one of my absolute favorite features. It has a blade clutch. So you can leave this mower running while you empty the grass bag, and that's a really nice feature. Now this one here, I've used occasionally. This is sort of my backup mower. And this mower, I hate this mower. This mower has screwed me over so many times. That one has too, but this one, we're talking dollars and cents wise with other people. This is a Toro Recycler. It's got a 6.5 horsepower Tecumseh engine. It's also guaranteed to suck, and it does. This one has a couple of interesting features. The other one doesn't. Does not have the blade clutch. This handle is merely your regular dead man switch. You let go of it, the engine shuts off. It does have this wash port. It's got a steel deck. So it's nice to have that wash feature. I don't know if that really works, but it's there. It's also electric start, which is a nice thing, although the battery in this is dead, I'm sure. It's a 12-volt battery, though, so I actually could just jump it with one of my jumper packs. Let me tell you about what this mower has done for me. So this mower is a 2007 model. I think this is a mower that Dave and I picked up on out of a classifieds, maybe Craigslist or someplace, probably around 2010. It had a problem with the rear wheels. This is a self-propelled. Both these mowers have this personal pace, which is, in my experience, absolutely one of the best and also one of the most pain in the ass systems. When it works, it's phenomenal. But I've had these break a lot, and others that I've repaired for other people seem to break a lot. So this one had something wrong with the hubs. I think there was something stripped in the hubs of each wheel. It's rear-wheel drive. And I had to replace that. And what else did we have to do to this mower when we got it? We didn't have to do a whole lot. I think the battery in it was good at the time, and after the self-propelled was fixed, seemed good to go. Now, before Dave and I would sell a mower or a tractor, we always used it a couple times on the lawn. And being the fact that we sell these in early spring, there's not a lot of lawn to mow, but we do use them and make sure that they work okay, and this one did pass the test. So my friend and co-worker was looking for a mower to replace his really old Toro, and I sold him this one. Dave and I split the money, and I brought it to his house and started it up, showed him how to use it. Everything seemed fine. He calls me 2 days later and he says, as soon as this thing hits the grass, it dies. Well, long story short, there was some sort of problem with the carburetor, and his grass had gotten pretty tall because his lawnmower had died a while back. And I ended up having to either rebuild or possibly replace the carburetor, whichever was cheaper. You can get these carburetors pretty cheap these days. And so then he used it fine, ran great, cut the tall grass no problem. He used it for about another month, and then he called me up and said, self-propelled doesn't work anymore. So I went there and found that the self-propelled cable had rotted out, which I was soon to learn is a very common Toro problem, which this one has done several times, and I'll explain why in a few minutes, and ones I've repaired for other people. had to replace the stupid cable. The season was almost over at that point. He used it for probably another month into September, and then next season I was happy to hear that it started up okay. I told him about make sure you run the gas out of it. And he used it 1 or 2 times to mow his lawn, and then the motor, the engine, fell off the body. That's right, it fell the fuck off. And that was about the last straw, and he was pretty upset, and we're good friends. I said, look, I'll give you your money back. You know, I'll give you your money back. You couldn't even get a year's use out of this thing. So Dave and I bought it back from him, and what I had found is that the motor bolts had loosened themselves and completely disappeared. So I had to re-bolt this motor onto this, and I used it for the rest of that season. And I think my plan was I was maybe going to sell it again, and then I noticed that it seems to leak. It was seeping oil from, I believe, the crankcase seal here. So I'm like, yeah, great. So I just used it. It didn't leak, you know, to the point where I couldn't use the thing to mow the lawn. You just had to put oil in it every couple of times you mowed. So I used it for the rest of the season, and toward the end of the season, the cable broke. The not the self-propelled cable, the dead man switch cable. So I replaced that, and I said, okay, this mower is not going anywhere. And I've just sort of used it occasionally at my house ever since. I think I used it for 1 whole season at my house. I think that was 2014 when this thing was broke again. I think that was when its self-propelled cable broke, and then immediately afterwards the blade clutch cable broke. So this was my main mower for that 2014 season. Then the self-propelled cable broke again on me. I think the second season I used it. And I believe in 2016, that's when I finally replaced the cable, and I used it a little bit then, and that's the last I used it. So that's the Boomerang Toro mower. I mean, you've heard the expression, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. This cannot be trusted. So it stays here, where I can keep an eye on it. You know, I'm standing here and I'm talking about this mower, and I thought I noticed the front wheels look kind of crooked. And look at this. The friggin' hubs are cracked. God, not just the one. Look. This one's cracked too. Frickin' piece of shit. You know, this thing's just the gift that keeps on giving. Now this mower over here. When I bought this thing, I think it was 2 years old. This is a 2005 model. You know what? I bought it in 08. I bought it in 08, and I actually stored it for a couple of years. It ran great. I drained the gas of it, and I stored it for a couple of years, knowing that soon I'd be buying a house and I would need a lawnmower. And this is a really nice aluminum deck, the personal pace self-propelled system, the blade clutch, which is fantastic. Anyway, this thing has gone through, I think, in the 10 years I've used it, I believe it's gone through 3 self-propelled cables, and I think it went through 1 or possibly 2 blade clutch cables. And the way you shut this mower off, since this is not a dead man switch, there's a little rocker switch here that you flip to shut that off. Now the other thing that happened is that a lot of this stuff has fallen apart. Some of this stuff just vibrated itself loose. You know, I probably didn't check it as much as I should have, and it all just sort of vibrated itself loose. This thing, the plastic part, broke, and I had to just replace it with a nut. So little things that just sort of become annoying things later. Now I'll show you why the damn cables on this bitch rust out so much. This is normally screwed down. Now the first 5 years I owned this mower, used it here at the house, I took meticulous care of this thing. Every time I was done with it, I hosed it off, I flipped it over, and I washed the underside. That was a big mistake. I'll explain why. Because what I found, what I learned over time, was that, hey, this screwed down cover hides this area, and this area fills with grass. And this is where your cables come in. Your self-propelled cable is here, and your blade clutch cable is here. And that's why they rotted out, because they get covered in grass, and then moisture is retained because I washed the thing so much I thought I was doing good. And the damn cables rust out. Now this one you can see rusted out way up here. Now this, since I refused to buy a new cable for this piece of junk, although I may now because I'm getting really sick of this. For the last 2 years, I have just tied this to some zip ties, which is tied to a chain, which goes to a hook off an old bungee cord, and this works reasonably well. It's not perfect. Every so often you see here the rusted cable breaks some more, and you got to tie another knot, and then sometimes you got to cinch up these zip ties. This is pretty half-assed solution, and I think I may just buy a new self-propelled cable, because the problem is you can never really get this to be exactly the tension that it should be. So I will be keeping these mowers, and I will be fixing these. Now this one I haven't used in a couple of years, but I did run the gas out of it, and I'm going to put some oil in it, and see if it put some gas in there as well, and see if it starts. And if it starts and it runs okay, I'm probably going to take it apart and fix that that leaking sump seal there. So that'll be in another video. I'll give that thing a try. And then this, I guess I'll give in to the man, and I'll replace that damn self-propelled cable. And hopefully this thing will keep on trucking for a little while longer. It's the Toro Recyclers, the mowers I love to hate.